Can I go start?
Yes, you can start.
Okay. I'm here today to talk about self-esteem, but first I have a few advanced words that I'll be using during the presentation to explain. And the first word is mutable, which means something being changeable or able to vary. The next word is abstract, which means to prevent or detain something or someone. Fluctuating is when something changes or varies or shifts irregularly. And the last word is deteriorate, which means something getting worse. Okay. So I'm sure that the majority of everyone present here today have heard people in your everyday life throw around the terms self-image, self-confidence, and self-esteem. But have you ever sat down and thought about what these three terms actually mean and what sets them apart? They are characteristics we're told we need to improve in order to feel fulfilled or pleased with ourselves. But I myself have always felt some uncertainty as to knowing the difference between these terms. And if you don't fully comprehend something, you can't really adjust or develop it. So as to differentiate, self-image is quite self-explanatory in the sense that it refers to one's image of themselves, in short, how we perceive ourselves. Self-confidence is not too complicated either, as it's the definition of the confidence we have in ourselves, what we believe we're able to accomplish in general or performance-wise. When it comes to self-esteem, which is the topic of today's presentation, it's how we feel about ourselves, and we often define it as being either low or high, or in other words, healthy. It's described as being a mutable characteristic which is impacted by setbacks as well as successes, either personal or professional. But let's talk more about low self-esteem, since it's the most common thing people bring up when discussing the subject. Low self-esteem is essentially feeling bad about yourself, and according to writers Morris Rosenberg and Timothy J. Owens, it tends to create sensitivity within people. This due to a fragile sense of self. Having low self-esteem can affect your life in a multitude of ways. It's, after all, like having a very harsh critic inside your head at all times. Lena Firestone writes on PsychLive that low self-esteem can lead to a somewhat paranoid personality, as you can see betrayal or abandonment where there isn't any. This due to insecurity. It can furthermore obstruct people from taking on new activities or challenges in life or at work, for example. This also due to a personal insecurity. And dealing with low self-esteem is probably a battle many of us have fought at some point, myself included. And as I mentioned, self-esteem isn't immutable, but something that can vary depending on what period of life you're going through. As for myself, self-esteem has been fluctuating frequently throughout the years. At times, I feel like I'm at an all-time high, while at other times seem to have hit rock bottom in that sense at least. And going through changes is an element that has impacted the way I feel about myself. And in times of uncertainty, this can deteriorate. And I tend to get stuck in feeling not good enough, competent enough, talented enough, or ambitious enough. With the situation being what it is, having the COVID-19 pandemic in mind, things are more uncertain than ever. And that, in combination with graduating, has resulted in a mental state close to chaos personally. When my self-esteem is low, I struggle to complete simple everyday tasks such as going out for fresh air, getting into jeans, preparing proper meals, or doing my assigned schoolwork. In short, motivation is severely lacking while procrastination is thriving. But with that said, this assignment has given me an opportunity to sit down and do some research on how you can increase your self-esteem and deal with the problem constructively. So, psychologist Guy Winch has developed an improvement strategy consisting of 5 steps, a guide I've tried following myself these last couple of weeks, and in this presentation I'll take you through 3 of the, in my opinion, most effective ones. Though I do suggest you read through all of the steps, as improving self-esteem can be very individual. The first step is about using positive affirmations in a correct way. The meaning of and purpose of this is that people with low self-esteem that use affirmations such as, "I'm going to be great at this thing," could be doing more harm than good. This because those kinds of statements are too opposing to how you already feel about yourself. Instead, Winch suggests altering the affirmation in order to make them more believable. For example, changing "I'm going to be great at this thing" to "I'm going to do my absolute best to succeed at this." And personally, I thought that this took away a lot of the performance anxiety some of these statements can bring and left room for accepting eventual failure. And a Winch's third step that I found very essential and also lacking in my own case is about tackling the ability to accept compliments. And this is something people dealing with low self-esteem struggle with, as it tends to make them uncomfortable, which applies to myself as well. I usually try to dismiss them by reflexively saying, "Oh, stop it," or something like that. What can be done instead is preparing answering alternatives that generally works for all kinds of compliments. Winch had some great examples that I've tried applying to my everyday life, such as a simple "thank you" or "that's very kind of you." And I'd say that this helped me take the compliment to heart instead of brushing it off. And it actually made me feel more polite, which in turn made me feel better about myself. And the last step, and the most essential and important according to myself, is eliminating self-criticism and introducing self-compassion. We need to be kinder to ourselves. Winch expresses the way to go about this in a great way by writing that we should treat ourselves like a close friend. This is a bit cliche, but also true. The criticism we direct at ourselves would we rarely, if ever, direct at a friend. And after applying this to myself and my own way of thinking, I realized that I've been more careful with myself and my feelings lately. And it's been a nice change to apply the same thoughtfulness I have when speaking to friends or family, and it has made me realize the impact my thoughts have on my self-esteem. In summary, the majority of times I am my own enemy. It's my self-criticism that results in low self-esteem, which is quite sad. But to look on the bright side, this also means that it's up to me to improve and start treating myself better and with more kindness in order to attain a healthy self-esteem. And this is also the advice I would give to others that from time to time struggle with low self-esteem. Allow yourself to be kind to yourself. And these are my sources, and thank you for listening.